I think one of the things that's so interesting is that these honorees are very much separated by time and by place, and yet their visions were so similar. I mean, whether you're talking about habitat protection or global warming, they were at the vanguard of this in their own spheres.
You know, I worked for Governor Pataki for 12 years, and what I loved about him is he loved the environment, he loved conservation. He really thought and believed and put into action that you could help the eagle and the economy at the same time.
George Pataki loved the land. You could see it in him. He loved being out on the land, and his legacy is land protected. Whether it's the park system, the Adirondacks in particular, but he protected land.
You know, the million-acre goal was actually articulated, I think, in one of his State of the States, and then it just became, no, we're going to do it by this year, or we're going to get 500,000 acres by this year, and then it became, by the time I leave.
Coming away with 1 million acres protected, what an amazing legacy. And it's because he had a vision and he cared about it in his heart, and he was just a good person, and people wanted to rally around it and do it.
I mean, it wasn't just the big, natural areas. He also knew that the respites were needed by the people of the city of New York and other urban areas. And he really did the full gamut of, very small urban to very large rural.
It wasn't just in one particular area, not just in the Valley, not just on Long Island, not just in the Adirondacks. It was the entire state.
And he loved Audubon, I have to say. He loved Audubon. When he bought Knox Farm State Park, we have an Audubon Center there.
New York State was the first state to codify the important bird areas in state law, so that they must be recognized and given priorities. First state in the country to do
Now,
this.
John, did any other states follow suit?
There's other states that are starting to follow, but it started in New York.
The Bird Conservation Area program is brilliant. He appreciated how much Audubon was connecting people with nature, and he said, and we had a true conservation agenda and not a political one.
And, a lot of great ideas came from Audubon and came from the other environmental groups, obviously BCAs. But in case of the Bond Act, the Beacon Institute that he's working on now, the Hudson River Estuaries Institute, those actually came from him, and he, pushed those ideas.
But the difference when Governor Pataki came into the early days when Peter was DEC commissioner was there was money available to do sort of the big projects, the big acquisition projects. And Peter's big challenge was to get the guys who had all the money in the sewer and water business to think differently, and that was where all the money was at the time. There was not much for land acquisition.
They also both took the lead on addressing acid rain issues.
Yeah, right.
Peter was very influential in getting Audubon activists involved in acid rain, sending out these kits where you can test the rainwater. They were really leaders on that issue back when we didn't know if this was a solvable problem.
Some of the issues that Peter Berle was involved with while he was at DEC and at Audubon, and some of the same issues that the governor was involved with later on.
What he did nationally, the legacy he leaves across the country is really pretty amazing. He became president of Audubon in the middle of the Reagan administration, which was not always real friendly to the environment. And we were back then fighting to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and he led the environmental community. We're still fighting to protect it today, but I don't know that it would still be there if it weren't for Peter's leadership back then. We had huge attacks on the Endangered Species Act, and he was again leading the environmental community. I don't know if we might have lost it back then if Peter had not been there. He was a huge champion of old growth forest and ancient forests back then. Again, I can't imagine all the places that are there yet because of his leadership on the national level.
I can add, John, he didn't sit here in New York and say we should do it. He would go out there and he would look, he would tramp us through some of the most incredible places to say, now we're going to do something about that. So we finished up on the Russian Arctic coast, talking of Beringia International Park. We finished up in, as you say, the Pacific Northwest and the far south there. And he says, I don't go out protecting land. I go out and put ourselves in harm's way. I don't care what the consequences are. We're going to get sanctuaries in places that count, and we're going to stand there and protect them.
And Peter gave Audubon so much credibility by building 700 Broadway the way he did as a living example of how you can have efficient buildings, really set the pace, be a business leader, make it work financially. He really walked the walk and made Audubon a leader. By that, the symbol of that was so powerful.
And now that's pervasive.
Well, 700 Broadway has set the standard for what green buildings should be, and we're very proud of that legacy. When we moved to 225 Varick, we wanted to make sure that we were going to be right up there at the top. We've got platinum LEED certification on our new office space, which is top of the line. and showing how it can be done now. Peter would be so proud to know that this stuff is off the shelf and now we're doing a whole new generation of green.
When people learned that Peter was injured and then with his death, the email messages we got all pointed to one thing, leadership, and he led from the front, and he was a real inspiration.
He had the courage of his convictions. If he thought it was right, he was going to do it. His visions were usually right, they were very good, and he went after them.
He was ahead of his time on energy and land conservation, on so many things. And I just think of all the places that are protected now because of what he did, and how much further we're ahead on climate change now because of his early leadership. I just wish he was here to be able to enjoy those places yet, and I wish he was here yet to be able to see the results of what he's done to help us address climate change. And I hope we'll be able to live up to his expectations.
I think what's great about Governor Pataki is that, not only did he leave this great legacy for New York and did all this work while he was in office, and now he's in the new chapter of his life, he's continuing to work on.
They were two incredible people. I think that the state of New York, people of the state of New York, owe a great debt of gratitude to. And I'm thrilled we're honoring them today.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.